real estate market right now is totally changed. I will be honest, it's a little bit of a surprise. In March of this year, we had already seen the market changing pace. And then the Bank of Canada came in and started with their increases. And then at one point, just started, with really heavy rate increases like we've never seen in the history of Canada before. And people are saying, oh, but the rates are still low. Well, when the rates start at 0.25% and now in just a few short months later are 3.25%, that's not a small increase. It doesn't matter if we're, if we were at 5% before and it goes from 5% to 8%, that would be huge too. But it would be different. It would be like going from 5% to 10% or 15%. Not quite, but it feels like that for the average person who was looking at really low rates, listening to the Bank of Canada when he was saying, oh, go ahead, spend money, we're going to give it to you cheap until 2023. And this is the governor of Canada directing us in this direction, while him and our government in cahoots together, spending money and supporting the spending of money at a rate that we've never ever seen in history as well. During a time of the absolute worst economic environment that we could ever be in, which was an environment that was induced by our government, who shut down all businesses, pretty much all businesses, with the exception of just a couple. The grocery store was allowed to stay open, the beer store, of course, but churches and everything else and restaurants and everything else had to be closed. Everything was shut down. You weren't allowed to go to work. As a matter of fact, you weren't even allowed to go out in the street for a casual walk or take your kids to the park. And so they created this, I would say, desert or an economy that would be destitute, where there was no economic flow of money and trade going on whatsoever. And then the Bank of Canada then injected this false sense of prosperity where they just created money out of thin air. At least that's what we believe. They deny that. However, they went and created this very rich environment with plentiful of money. If you can remember back, and I do remember back to high school, they taught us that in our economics 101, if the government is printing money, that inflation will follow. And so here we are now, how many years later, and they were printing money like water. They're surprised of the inflation rate. This leads directly into the slowdown that we're experiencing in the market. So the Bank of Canada controls the value of the money that we use. Its policies controls the amount of interest that we pay on all of our debt. And this is an incredible amount of power. We have to agree that this is something that we need somebody at the helm that is not playing a game. We need accountability. In my business, if I turn around and I do things and I start losing money, people are very mad at me. There's accountability. They're not happy. And it can lead to some pretty drastic things. And so the Bank of Canada sent out a tweet on August the 25th, 2022. And the tweet was because, there was some pressure. And so they put out a hashtag, you asked us, if we printed cash, and they're very technical here, cash, to finance the federal government. We didn't. And then they go on to say, we bought it with settlement balances. Wow, that is really technical. And so they didn't use cash, they used settlement balances. Now we'll just go on. So they're denying the link between the bank printing money and the government's deficits and the current inflation rates that we're suffering. That's basically what they're trying to say here is, no, we had nothing to do with the cash. The Bank of Canada also said, on Twitter that the pandemic has been a crisis like no other. And as a result, we took various measures like buying bonds to support and ensure a strong and stable economy. This is where the problem is. They created this false barren economy, this economy where no one's allowed to go anywhere. And then the Bank of Canada then went and bought the bonds to support all the bad debt that the government was creating so that the government could continue to spend like crazy. And this caused a lot of problems. You can imagine, we can't just continue to print money. You're printing the money and you're blaming it on the pandemic. But it's not the pandemic that caused all this spending. It's the government policies. So as our government created a record amount of debt, the Bank of Canada bought $5 billion every week worth of this debt, which they call bonds. This was a system where they bought all the government debt, IOUs, bond, whatever you want to call it, with settlement balances. That's what the term was. They didn't buy it with cash, they bought it with settlement balances. And these settlement balances are deposited into large financial institutions. Then the money floating around in our economy went from 89 billion to 385 billion. And you're wondering why the money started coming and flowing around the economy? Well, that is why, because they put the settlement balances into the financial institutions, giving them much more freedom in how they would go out and expand, hire, pay out more money, lend more money, all this stuff. And so this happened in just 2 short years. I mean, the bank doesn't really care. Bank of Canada doesn't care because, I mean, if they need more money, they'll just print it. So they don't care. But us people do. Our children do care. And so, I mean, they will care. They may not know right now, but they're going to know in the future when they have to pay all this debt back. And so we're supposed to be surprised at the inflation rate. This is why I call for a new Bank of Canada governor. But, you know, I'm really saddened because the governor, Tiff Macklem, told us to go out and spend more money. We could trust that he would keep the rates low well into 2023 and that our biggest threat was deflation. But he was wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, he's lost his credibility. And not because he was wrong. I'm not saying, well, you know what, you shouldn't be there because you're wrong, but rather because you actually caused all this. You actually created policies that caused all this. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you enjoyed it. And please let us know your thoughts in the comments, as well as any questions you may have. We're live most Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure to tune in. Thank you again for watching, and remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon so you can stay up to date on all our future uploads.